Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Growth Diaries with me, Cody. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new, subscribe, leave a comment. If you've been watching, subscribe, leave a comment. Join me on my growth sessions. Anyways, so today I want to talk about something that is really exciting to me, like super duper, all time most exciting thing ever. And for me, and that's my spiritual awakening. And the reason I want to share about it is because if I share my spiritual awakening with people, they can see that it can happen to them. And also like it's something that's just so a part of who we should be and where I came from to my spiritual awakening. I think a lot of people could relate to, because when I was growing up, I was raised Mormon, and I went to church, but I never really believed in it. And when I went into my teenage years, I just never really connected, and I stopped going to church. And so what I started doing was, as I was getting older, I started identifying more and more and more as an atheist. I started living that way. I did not believe there was anything greater than ourselves. I believed we were random. I believed evolution brought us to where we are today. We were just people who happened to be here to live a life, and then it was over. And there were random events. Things were happy. Things were beautiful. Things were not. Things were, all of that type of stuff. But there's no connectedness and no meaning behind it. And, I wore that with pride. Like, I thought people who were religious or believed in spirituality had been brainwashed, right? Like, I was like, I am the unique one. I'm the one who gets it. They do not. And this went on for years and years and years. Up until recently, I just always thought there was nothing more to life. And, as I was getting older, I always kind of started feeling an emptiness in my soul. I say it as my soul now. And a lot of you are aware, or not a lot of you, but some of you are aware that I'm in recovery since October 1st of 2013 for substances of alcohol and drugs. And, I checked myself into a 5150 after a suicide attempt. And then I tried to do it again, and then I checked myself in. And so once I went into an inpatient to try to work on my drugs and alcohol, I had like an epiphany of maybe a smaller awakening about how I can actually get better. And so I started going to one of the fellowships that teaches a lot of spirituality. And so I dove into that. I started feeling that. And I started doing all those types of things. But I never really got it on like a deep level spirituality. And so I started getting my mind open to it a little bit. But one time, about 6 months into my recovery, I was driving in a car alone, and it was at night. And there were a bunch of cars around. I can't remember if it was traffic or whatever, but I didn't have my music on, and I was stopped at a stoplight, or not even a stoplight, just in traffic. And all of a sudden, like, I can't really explain it, but it was just like I dropped. And when I dropped, I felt this connectedness to all things. I felt a oneness to all things. And it was so, words can't even really describe it. So what I'm saying to you is just something, it's words, but it doesn't really do it justice. And so it was almost like a web of connectedness, that everything is one. And I felt this insane sense of love and connectedness and wholeness. And then pretty soon I just snapped right out of it. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I was like, was that an LSD trip? Or a flashback? Because I used to do a bunch of LSD. Like, what was that? That was insane. Like, who do I call? How do I tell people about this? What just happened to me? And so instead of doing that, I had the inside of me just say, like, that was for you. Like, that was for me. Like, you don't need to run around telling people. You can tell people, but you don't need to get on a phone. Just like, that was a glimpse. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? And the thing that was crazy about it though, is I had the glimpse, but I didn't really do anything to pursue it. The way that my mind looked at it was that I was shown something, and that was it. There it is. There's your glimpse that there's something more. And that's great. I'm internally grateful I was given that moment. But as time goes on, that one moment that maybe lasted 30, 60 seconds starts becoming more and more faint. And, and I wasn't doing anything to try to get it back. I was back in my routine. I was back in doing the things I was doing. I was doing my spiritual practices, but it wasn't anything where I was connecting like on a deep level. So that moment passed, and it just kind of passed, and it passed, and it passed. And, as time went on, I just kind of not forgot about it, but you just don't feel it as fresh. It's just natural with time. And so I started getting back into, the normalcy of life, and I started getting some time under my belt, and I started getting a career and doing all of these type of things. But, and I just kind of forgot about it, and forgot about spirituality, and forgot about religion. And I was doing my program, but I wasn't really that connected. And I started switching up my jobs and my career because I wasn't happy. I had this quote unquote like great life, great career. I have a beautiful wife, amazing kids. This past like December, I just started, after I quit my job and I went back to school, and, but I still just felt so disconnected, and so something was off, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I started living in despair because I started looking at the things that were going on in the world, and I felt helpless, and I felt lost, and I felt like this randomness and this evolution and how we got here is not fair. I just didn't like how much people were getting hurt, and the terrible things that were going on in the world, from the war in Yemen to US politics to, just so much stuff. And I started getting really depressed. And there would literally be times when I would lay in bed and I would cry at night because I just felt like the world was such a terrible place. And I couldn't grasp that there was any beauty or anything great going on. And I was just so lost in my mind about what was going on. And, when I was in my addiction, there didn't seem like there was any way out. I didn't feel like there was anything that I could do to get better. So I tried to end my own life because I didn't feel like there was going to be this is just how it's going to be. This time it was different. This time when I hit that real despair, I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And not like I don't want to live. I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to be happy. I'm seeing other people. Why are they so happy? Why aren't I that happy? What can I do to get that happy? What are they doing differently? And so I started searching for people on accounts and asking people who seemed really happy, what are you doing? Like, how are you this happy? Like, what am I doing? And people started guiding me. And I also just started searching for things. And a lot of them I was searching for on Instagram and other things as well. And I started finding things that almost was like the universe talking to me. And it was almost like the universe was showing me something. And I came across this account called Your New Frequency by Christina Furia. If you're familiar with my wife and I's podcast, We Are the Stigma, she was on there. Check it out. It's so good. And she started talking about things. She started talking about frequencies of what the vibration and frequency that we put out into the universe. And I came across another account, and it was from Vex King. And he's written a book about, it's called Good Vibes, Good Life. Like, read this book. It's so freaking good. It's a manual on how to get to self-love, and talks about vibration and, and frequencies and connecting to a higher purpose, and that there's more out there, and, you can make your happiness, and you can do things. And if anybody had asked me prior to December of last year, I would have thought this is a bunch of voodoo, I would have been like, dude, this shit's not for me. What is this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Frequencies, vibrations, law of attraction. Like, what is this stuff? I don't really understand it. But in February, I started thinking about it and being like, well, what if this is true? Just kept reading about it, kept following more people, started having open mind. A lot of the people that I were talking about showed some science that showed that as science is growing and evolving and learning more, a lot of this stuff is coming to be true. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because my rational mind needs a little something. I was like, all right, that's interesting. And, I all of a sudden was reading these things and going through these accounts, and I started talking to myself kindly, and I started doing things completely different than how I was doing them before. I cut out the news. I wasn't allowing myself to think negative thoughts. I was reading positivity all day long. I was saying nice things to myself. It was just like this complete change of who I was, because I was ready. And I remember sitting in bed with my wife, and all of a sudden it just dawned on me, this is how the world works. The universe works. There is more to life. And it wasn't even a thought. It was just a knowing. And I went whoosh, right back into it. And dude, I'm not fucking with you. I was like that for 11 days straight. I mean, my wife thought I was on drugs. It was such a trip. I felt like I was levitating. I mean, it was like I couldn't even like begin to explain the awesomeness of the experience that I had. It was just so otherworldly. And I connected to something so deep and so hard. And the thing that was so trippy about it is I wasn't even looking for a spiritual awakening. I wasn't even looking for it. I was just trying to be happier. And then I went down this path that all of a sudden, and it was like these changes, these things that were guiding me. Like I look back on them and I was being guided 100%. And then all of a sudden it happened. And it was, I mean, the raddest shit ever, you know? And I got out of it, of course, because, you know, some people don't. I did. And, you know, but I get back there all the time. And I feel this connectedness, and I understand now how the universe works and how it's not random and how it's connected. And there's perfection in what looks like madness. You know, I was reading this really interesting part about A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And he was just talking about how, you know, there's so many things that the mind can't grasp. And then eventually it does, you know, and it's just one of those things that's just, I mean, when it happened to me, so it's like some people are searching for spiritual awakening, right? They're going on pilgrimages. They're doing all these things. They're searching and searching and searching. And then it happens to them. And so they know it's going to happen. And, or at least they have an idea. And they're like, it's happening. Dude, I went from atheist to freaking spiritual awakening in like 2 weeks. You know, it was insane. And, you know, what I realized that so much of it, and if anybody's listening, kind of wondering like what the lead up to it and what I would recommend, at least how it worked for me, is changing what you're doing. Don't get stuck in the monotony of what you're doing. There were certain things that were building up that I look back on, and what I was doing is I was changing my thoughts and I was changing my patterns, and it was all kind of building up to getting out of this narrow field of view that I had built, that I lived in, and all of a sudden it started dropping down and dropping down and dropping down and dropping down until whoosh, everything opened up. You know, it's our purpose is to wake up, to have an awakening. The problem with it is you don't know how to, it's not something you can just plan. It's not something it just happens. But you can do things that can help you on your path, right? You can start making little promises to yourself. You can start, you know, doing little things for yourself. You can start talking kindly to yourself. You can start surrounding yourself with positive people. You can start looking at positive social media accounts. You can start limiting your news intake. I'm not talking about just putting up blinders to the terribleness in the world, right? Because the terribleness in the world is still there. But what spirituality and a spiritual awakening did for me is it provided me hope. It provided me hope that this mass awakening that's happening now, there's so many people going through it, especially with all the traumas that are happening, that we can affect change. It's not just stuck that way. Yes, some of it is going to be difficult. Some of it we might not be able to, you know, it's terrible stuff, but at least I felt like I had hope, and I do have hope. You know, for me, it's like my spiritual practice now, like my day consisted of waking up, hopping on my phone, going to work, being upset, answering emails, doing all this type of stuff, rinse, repeat, work out because I felt like I needed to, all this stuff. Now it's like every day I meditate, I pray, I do breath work, I do a gratitude list, I do all of these type of things. And it's because my spiritual awakening showed me how things work. And it is the raddest shit that can ever happen to you. So like, if you feel like it can never happen to you, you're wrong. Because not only can it happen to you, it's meant to happen to you. I can't tell you when, but you got to do some action. You got to change some things. You got to start talking some positivity and vibrational frequencies that are, you know, benefit you into your life. And you can have it. I did. I didn't even want it. I shouldn't say I didn't want it. I didn't even know it was coming. Of course, I would want it if I had known. But anyways, so thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Spiritual awakening is something that can happen to you. I was a person who wasn't even looking for it and was basically an atheist up until December or whenever. I don't know. I don't have a deadline, but basically my whole adult life. All right, guys, love you. Click the link to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.